Hey guys, welcome to the Legacy Podcast. I am Tim Bratz, and today I'm sitting down with Sam Staley, who owns Event.Gives. He's got a pretty cool background in the software and tech space, and a really cool story about how he's kind of scaled multiple companies, exited multiple businesses, and has some really neat things that he's working on right now, and a couple other things that are coming down the pipeline that he had mentioned off camera that I'm really excited to kind of watch his journey on, because they're big things. So let's go sit down with Sam and learn a little bit about how he started businesses, scaled those businesses, and exited those businesses over the past several years. All right, Sam Staley.
How are you?
Appreciate you being here, dude.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to hear about your journey. Like, obviously we're in the same kind of co-working space here in Mount Pleasant, and I wanna know a little bit more about Event.Gives. But talking offline, you've had a lot of stuff, a lot of startups, a lot of exits, a really cool entrepreneurial story. And that's what I'd love to focus on.
Yeah, for sure.
While we're here, is hear a little bit about your story, some of the lessons learned along the way. What were things that really sidetracked you, or some curveballs that happen, as we all get those curveballs, and how'd you get good at hitting those curveballs, right?
Yeah,
so,
that matters.
So let's go back to, I don't know, were you always entrepreneurial, or what was that like? And then talk to me a little bit about your career path.
Yeah, I'll go all the way back to that first time I jumped off the cliff, as I say. Mm-hmm. And so my background, I grew up in Georgia. I went to the Citadel, psychology major. I was headed to law school. I got into law school and kind of got sidetracked into the area of finance. I became a stockbroker over time. I'm give you the accelerated story to get us there. But one afternoon, I was going to see a client when I was a broker. I was late for the meeting, but also had forgotten the paperwork that I needed. And so instead of going all the way back to the office, and I'm going to date myself, this was before we had cell phones with internet. This was pre-time.
Yeah.
But I found myself kind of driving through a neighborhood, trying to get close enough to a house so some Wi-Fi would bleed out, and I could get to my email and download those documents. And I remember just being so frustrated, thinking, why am I having to do this? Why isn't there's Wi-Fi everywhere? So this would be easy, and there wasn't at the time. And so that afternoon, I did some research, and I discovered that that was not a thing, but technology existed that it could be a thing. And I quite literally that week went to my manager and I said, I'm quitting, but I want you to know why I'm quitting. I want to go after this idea, and went after it, launched. So that was my jump off the cliff. We launched the first metropolitan scale Wi-Fi network in the country. Google was doing it.
What city is this in?
In Charleston.
In Charleston.
Google was doing it in Philadelphia at the time. We beat them to the market.
Wow.
They are Google, so they scaled much faster than us. But that was a big win. And that was kind of my first run at it. And my dad, they didn't have the words for entrepreneur when he was coming up, but that's what he was. He kind of kicked around a lot of things and had some successes. But in that first attempt was all of those abilities to bang your head on problems, try to solve them, and so I got a lot of those reps early on. We had to make some pivots along the way to fund some of the build out and all these things. And in there is actually where I found my passion. So we actually manufactured the hardware to accomplish this. And
so what are these? Are these towers on top of commercial buildings
so
that are then shooting out Wi-Fi everywhere?
We would lease space on cell towers. We actually had a contract with the city that gave us access to every rooftop that they owned, all the parking garages and hospitals, basically, any light pole down any street. And so we manufactured equipment that would mount on all these different places. And at some point, we needed software to log into and run it. And we hired a company, and I would sit with this developer, and I would say, here's what our network does and what I think the software should do, because here's what our hardware does. And he would think for a moment and turn around and just start coding. And that, I was amazed to just see that come out of his mind and become reality that quickly. And I knew then I wanted to learn to code. And so I would take his code at night and kind of reverse engineer it and taught myself to code from what he did. And every company I've had since has been software related.
Really?
So that's where I kind of found my passion, I'd say.
Interesting. And you wanted to learn how to cook. Like, I love the idea of business and business development, but I usually try to find the who to do the how, right?
Yeah.
Like the who to do the what.
Yeah.
The person who is an expert versus me trying to reinvent the wheel or go through the learning curves. But that was a time where there was a lot of software stuff going on.
Right.
Things were growing. What year was that?
I'm gonna say 02, 03.
All right, so it was a dot-com boom, right?
Yep.
Like everything's going crazy, and that becomes a lot of the excitement. So it makes sense that you jump. Like I graduated college in 07, and everybody's making money in real estate, right? I became a real estate guy because that's what was going on in the market.
Right there too.
And so you know, it's funny how much we're formed by what's going on with the economy and all that kind of stuff. So you scale that business.
Yeah.
You go outside of Charleston. You go into some other cities. Like, what did that look like?
I didn't actually, and I think that was also a great lesson. Is I learned very quickly in that model. You know, that was a great early success to be the first at that thing, right? But then I learned really quickly there were two things. One was at the time we had cell phones, but they didn't have internet. Or they might have had it, but it was extremely slow, right? But then we had Wi-Fi in our homes that was fairly fast, you know, relative to the time. And there was this race to see Wi-Fi was small but fast, and cell networks were very large and slow. So there was this race to see which one was going to get to that perfect medium. And I could see clearly cell phones were getting there first. And I discovered that all the work we had done to build out Charleston, if I just wanted to go down the road to Columbia or Greenville, all new government, all new red tape, all new infrastructure. So I learned quickly about scale and that this business didn't have it. And so I exited that. I basically kind of sold it to a company called US Internet, and they turned into a bunch of hotspots, which maybe they're still here today. I don't know. But that was the end of that story, and I thought just
was that a big deal, like to exit that company?
For me, it was.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a huge number, but for me, it was a huge number at the time, and it was, you know, I look back at that and say the success was, I did a thing. I afforded myself to live through doing that thing and came out the other end with a little bit, right? And to pick my head up and see what's next.
Now you puff your chest out a little bit more on the next deal, right? You stand a little bit taller. What's next? You know, like.
And you learned a ton.
Yeah.
Right.
And those little wins create the confidence, right? Confidence is the memory of winning. And so as you have some of those successes, even though you're getting kicked in the nuts over and over and over again while you're going along, those little successes are so. You know, they're so what's the word I'm thinking of?
Well, they're important.
Self-sustaining.
To the outcome, right? You got to have them.
Yeah, and it just grows. It makes you so happy that like the good days, although fewer and far between, far outweigh those medium and bad days, which are more often. But the good days are so good, it makes those other ones worthwhile.
Well, I mentor a lot of folks from time to time, and that's one of the things I tell them is when you seek advice, it's great if you find someone who had a huge exit, but even better, find someone who's failed a lot. Because they have learned a lot, right? That's to me, that's the most important is failing. But, and this is a little cliche, fail fast, of course. But I don't even look at it in terms of failing. I think of it more like a scientist. You know, I had this thesis that this is right or wrong, and the faster I can prove this thesis right or wrong is the quicker I get to my next thesis. And at some point, one of those theses will turn into an outcome.
That's a great perspective because a lot of people think this is the only thesis. Right. This is the only. It has to be right, and it's. A lot of times, if you're an inventor, most times it's not, dude. And so then you define yourself as that one thing. No, it wasn't. It was a hypothesis of what I thought might happen or what might occur. And guess what? It wasn't the right, you know, ingredients in order to get us there. And then put us on a different track. But now we learn. Now we can do it better. Now we can do it faster. And I think if you go at it with that mindset, it helps you get through those failures, those losses, or those, you know, getting tripped up and whatever that looks like.
Maybe it's a Jedi mind trick, but you're basically saying that failure was in fact the successful resolution to my thesis, right? And so you can look back and say they weren't failures. You just kept proving, you know, your way towards.
I love it. So now you're walking a little bit taller. You had your first exit. You're looking for the next thing. It stays in that software engineering side of the world. What's next?
So I went through, so I just learned to code, and I thought I knew a lot. Of course, I'm still learning, right? There's always stuff to learn, but I was a pretty good coder, and I'll raise my own flag and say I'm really good now. But I was still learning my craft, right? It's that 10,000 hours and just taking any job I could get. Let me build your website. Let me, design your website. But just anything I get, I was just starting out in this world with a little software company, and I learned in that experience of my first software company, I've had a couple, how to price, because I was kind of hitting the market and I was going on a lot of freelance sites and friends and family just looking for gigs, right? And I think most people's knee jerk would be, well, let me try to do it for as cheap as possible. So if I'm cheaper than whoever they're talking to, I'll get the gig. And I learned very clearly that was not the case. People, by and large, there's some people that will, but by and large, the clients you want are looking for quality.
Yep.
And
especially in that space.
Yes, and there was literally a paradigm moment where I was, my average job, gig at that time was like $800 for coding a thing. And I just said, I'm just gonna try this. My next thing I put out there, I'm just gonna, instead of 800, I'm gonna say 8,000. And I started getting work. 10 times more work.
It's wild.
And I started getting work from real clients, and then I learned that, and it wasn't just an arbitrary number, by the way, but it was pricing myself appropriately and people seeing a price that they felt was going to give them the quality they were looking for. And that was the difference. And I started kind of moving up bigger and bigger jobs.
And then there's bigger jobs, there's more onus on you to deliver a better product, so now you're perfecting your craft, you're becoming better, and it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy that ends up happening just because people started believing you, and then you started believing in yourself even more, and then just like this positive momentum gets built up.
Yeah, 100%. And I think just the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. Even I was just joking with some of our coders upstairs. I'll get in the zone a couple nights ago, still writing some code, and I'll wake up the next day and look at that and go, I don't even know who wrote that or what it does, but it looks pretty good. So you're always just going to get better, right?
Yeah. Was that the next business? The next business was essentially a software business as a service business for other people who were needing software coded, written, whatever.
It was straight up software development, coding, code house, whatever you want to call it. And so I started growing that. And I started I had Sony, I had HP, I had Tropicana, I had really big clients, hospital systems. And the next lesson I learned from that was I'd spend half my time making sure I was filling up my pipeline to have work, but then I'd have to go do the work. And so it was this constant battle of back and forth of I got to make sure I'm getting more work ready, but I got to do the work I sold. And I learned that that's not scalable, right? And so at some point, I had someone interested in that business, a much larger software development company. And so they actually bought that company. And
did you have employees and stuff?
I didn't. It was just, I actually had a guy who was a lead gen guy, and me. And I was
going to say, because that's like, it's like always be marketing, right? You got to always be prospecting for more deals.
So, you can't grow when you're constantly stopping one to do the other, right?
Or you have these feast and famine cycles.
Absolutely.
Which gets you, you got to be really good at managing money,
But a company bought that, and they really bought my client base. They wanted Sony. They wanted these clients, and so they bought the company. Took and wanted me to basically grow their dev center in Costa Rica with the same model that I had done this. And so for the next couple of years, I did that, lived in Costa Rica, grew that to 500 developers. Ultimately,
did you have equity in that business?
I didn't have equity. I had some good bonus structures, and I did some good work down there, and I got to live in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I was going to say,
that was my perk.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
It was awesome.
Quality of life.
Yeah, so doing that, learned. I think what I learned there is I don't want to work in a large corporation. I like those small and mediums. That ultimately sold to Accenture and became Accenture Digital. So that's where that company led. And in between, I had one more software company, kind of did similar stuff. And since then, I've been launching products because that's what I learned is a service is hard to scale. You got to keep pumping the business, keep doing the work. And by the way, just a throwback, that person that I learned to code from, the guy we hired to code for the wireless company, was, I don't know if you know Greer Allen. Greer started a company here locally called Boomtown.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was starting Boomtown while I started the wireless, and I learned to code from him. And when I started seeing Boomtown's great success and the way they were scaling, I cued on that and said, I'm never going to go this wide just trying to push a service, right? It's a product. Let me build something that I can sell 100 times. And so that became my focus, to say, what can I build with software that is a product that I can just sell a subscription or just sell it over and over and over. And so
Would you say that SaaS is a product?
I think so, if you can get someone to subscribe, right?
Right.
And that goes back to, you were talking about some software you're working on. You certainly wouldn't, every time a client needs real estate software, you wouldn't start from scratch and rebuild it.
Right.
You build it and resell it and subscribe,
And
right?
it's a monthly subscription, right?
It sounds stupidly simple, but as you're growing and not knowing all of these things and learning real time, it didn't occur to me until at a point that you can't scale something if you're constantly building it fresh, right? So that was a lesson I learned, as simple as it is, but to see it in real time. But I've had a ton of products since then. I won't bore us with the weeds of all of them, but Lunch Club was one. Event.Gives, which is what I'm spending all my days on right now and loving doing it, has certainly been the most successful to date. But I've had a lot of little product companies and some that I still kind of work on. And I've always got ideas kicking around my head, and I have to decide, the lesson I'm learning right now in real time is lots of fun ideas. You've got to decide where's your energy best spent, right? And so that's a thing I'm learning right now.
Every day is filled with many great ideas. What is the best idea?
Exactly.
And what is that number one thing that produces the highest, whether that's return on time, return on, impact, right? Like whatever you're trying to go after, return on fulfillment, return on whatever, it's like, what is that one thing? And because we're in the age of too much opportunity.
Yes.
That's why not nobody, but that's why a lot of people don't move forward. It's not because there's not enough opportunity. There's too much opportunity and nobody focuses.
You've got to track something down.
They get pulled, they get pulled in all these different directions. So let's talk about Event.Gives because that's how we got to meet each other. You guys work with Legacy Digital, and I'm a minority owner in that. And
Thank you. They do a great job.
Oh, thank you. They, they're rock stars.
They're great.
They're so good at what they do. And then they've said nothing but great things about you guys. So I was like, oh, I'd love to meet Sam and just kind of rap with him a little bit, especially on the podcast. But let's talk. Give me a high level. If you're introducing Event.Gives to somebody for the first time, what is it?
Yeah. So I've honed this down. I've done a lot of pitch competitions. I've taught pitches and mentored and all things. And people talk about your elevator pitch, your 30-second, and I always try to push myself further. But my 10-second pitch is, we are Eventbrite with fundraising tools, and we keep a relationship with the attendee past the door, and that's what we do. And so we're facilitating silent auctions, live auctions, donation paddle raises. We do Dancing with the Stars events, lip sync battles where you're paying to vote on your favorite performers. We sell tickets to concerts, but all of it around creating opportunities to fundraise with these audiences attend. That's in a nutshell what we do.
Is it mostly nonprofit organizations, or it's a lot? It sounds like
it tends to be. So right, because it's fundraising oriented, nonprofits look for us, right? Because they're raising money. But if your Uncle Larry died 3 years ago and you want to have a golf tournament to raise money, but you're not, absolutely we'll help you do that. But it turns out 95% of our clients are nonprofits because that's who's raising money. So we don't say you have to be, but that's who we work for.
Yeah. So similar to like a GoFundMe, if somebody passes away and you want to help out their family, and you create this GoFundMe page and you contribute, but there's no tax write-off or
yes, absolutely. Like that. And the distinction I would draw with GoFundMe. So GoFundMe is pointed at what I would call a campaign. Someone died or something happened and we're raising money, And this GoFundMe campaign it might be long-standing forever, or it might last 6 months or a year, however long, till we reach our goal. What we focus on are fundraising events specifically, meaning we're going to have a gala tonight or a golf tournament today, and we're going to have 6 people show up, come in the room, we're going to have dinner, we're going to have an auctioneer on stage, and we're going to show a sad puppy video and try to raise a lot of money for puppies. That's what we do, and that's what we really focus on and are really good at, to kind of toot my own horn. And we're good at it because we touch a couple of thousand events a year, and we get to bang our heads on what doesn't work at events, so we've learned what does work, right? And it goes
And
right
so you
back
coach
to
a lot
that
through
same
your
model.
clients through that, and you're like, hey, if this didn't work, here's something else that you might want to try
Absolutely.
out.
We've seen this before, and here's the best outcome, right? And so that's what we really, and we talk about software. When I talk to our clients, my comments to them are, all the software we've built and all that it does in terms of checking your people in and selling them the ticket and all those things, that's what we do in our sleep. What we do is bring the knowledge we've gained through all the reps of events we've had and give it to you and coach you on how to have the best event you've ever had because we've seen it.
That's powerful.
And that's what we're selling.
That's powerful. So how does it work? So like, I'm a board member of a nonprofit. My best friend's daughter and my daughter's best friend passed away when she was 6 from a brain tumor called DIPG, and so they're hosting a lot of these events.
I have a friend, same thing.
Yeah, it's a absolutely horrible thing, and it's like a weed that grows on a child's brainstem and just kind of strangles their brainstem until they lose bodily function and eventually lose involuntary function, and so. Horrible thing, but then no money goes to childhood cancer, right? And so of all the money that's raised, over 99% goes towards some sort of adult, and only less than 1% goes to childhood cancer. So it's, I'm on the board, I'm like, how is this possible? How can we make a bigger impact? And we're actually hosting an auction at my next Legacy Summit that I host for my mastermind members in June. And all the profits of that are gonna go towards, so we're auctioning off artwork, we're auctioning off one-on-one consulting, coaching, deep dive into their business for doing some business development with my executive team. We're auctioning off a stay. I have a private island down in Beaufort. I have an awesome castle up in a mountain in western North Carolina, and like auctioning off all this cool stuff, right? And so the idea is 150, 200 people in the room and auction off these dozen or so type of really cool things. And what if I come to you and I say, hey, here's what I want to do, what would you say to me?
Yeah, so the first thing I would talk about is, you've answered a lot, how many people do you want to come? What outcome are you looking for? How'd you do last year, right? Are we going to try to beat that? If you had 200 people last year and you raised 150, we should expect at least that, right? And so that's where we start the conversations, is really digging into what are you trying to do. And in listening to you explain it, I immediately go to some of the data that I know that we track. And so I see lots of events where they will go, we've got 300 people coming, we're trying to raise $300,000. And I look at their event and I can say, oh, you've got trips, you've got experiences, you've got memorabilia, some baseball bats and all the things. And based on our data, because I'm a data nerd, we have a lot of people coming to a lot of events, and we probably know some of the people coming to yours. And I can look at your event and I can say, there's 80 people in your room who I've seen spend more than $5,000 on art, and you don't have any art you're gonna try to sell them. You need some art, right? And so those are the type of conversations we have to say, how can we take you to whatever your goal is plus 50%?
Because you've seen thousands of events for multiple years, and everybody who registers, and then everybody who spends money. And so you can see, if these people are registered for your event, they've been to all these other different events, pull that data in of like, this is what they bought, and this is fascinating.
And we even do it real time, right? So I get really nerdy about this kind of stuff. There's a stat I call dollars in the room, which I've never seen an event track. And this is more post-event success, maybe during event, but so we look at, I talk to a lot of events and they'll say, hey, we just closed, we raised $300,000. Last year we raised 250, so we did 50,000 more, great success, best event we've ever had. And I look at the data for that same event, and I can say at 9:15 in the evening, you had $378,000 in the room. So you might have done better than last year, but you left $78,000 on the table. Let's give you the ability to recognize that and give you ways to go capture it. And the way that happens is maybe you and I are here having dinner. You raise your hand for the castle in the mountains. I raise my hand for the castle. And it gets up to $10,000, let's say, and ultimately you go to 11, and that's a little rich for me. And I say, all right, good, have a great time, I'm out. That $10,000 that I had put in the room ready to spend, back in my pocket. And if you don't recognize that and give me another opportunity to bring it out, you lost it. And so those are the type things we try to uncover.
So it's like follow-up afterwards?
Follow up,
saying, hey,
or
listen,
even
we're
real
going to open
time.
up another week. And
Yeah, so we work with a lot of
off-season.
auctioneers as partners, and we can show them that data real time. And by the way, we can help you source items. We can say, oh, you've got some great trips and things. Let's put 3 more in there. Let's do a trip to Naples. Let's do a Wine Valley tour, whatever it is. And we know that in those cases, when that person wins at 11,000, you can go, hey, guess what? We just got the donor tell us we can have a second trip. You want that at $10,000 still? You got it.
I love it.
And so we're coaching to sell it twice, right? Get that money back in the room. So there's 100 things like that we've just learned and bring to our clients and say, this is how you raise money successfully.
That's all. So how have you built the business behind that, right? Because there's obviously a lot of value in the service that you're providing, the product that you're providing. How have you built that into a business for you guys? So how do you guys get paid?
And so when I came into this, it wasn't because I said, I just want to go do nonprofit stuff. It was selfishly, as an entrepreneur, my wife was on the auction committee at our kids' school, Sullivan's Island, and she volunteered one year to help with the auction, and they met at my office, and I watched them with paper clips and broken processes and messes, and I could not watch it without trying to fix it. And quite literally, I said, "Look,
dude, it's got to be a hard stick to be, because my kids go to Sullivan's too." To be a teacher at Sullivan's Island, right? You got all these entrepreneurs and all these people
with opinions,
giving feedback on, hey, you should do this better than that. Like, it's got to be tough, man.
But that's where it all started, right there. That's a great place, by the way. But I just literally didn't want to get up and down all night and check the paper, write my name on it, come back, and I was like, we got phones in our pocket. Can we just text a bid in? Let me build that. And I did, and that's all it did. Just let you text a bid, and it would outbid notify you via text.
Does it lose the excitement from the auctioneer not being able to
Well, they also do that.
Hands?
So that particularly is for the silent auction, right?
Okay.
The auctioneer's still up there doing his thing, right? Talking fast and all the stuff. But that particular feature set is for the silent auction.
Got it.
But that's actually more exciting because I didn't check the paper, but I just got a text. Oh my God, I got it. Let me bid back in, right? And
son of a gun.
Battling, right? And so that doubled their raise that they'd ever done prior to that year. And then the next year, or a few months later, they had another event and wanted to use it again. And I remembered waiting in line an hour to pay for my stuff. And I was like, you got to let me fix checkout. And so I just kept fixing things. And it got to a point where I had to go, if I'm going to spend time on this, I need to see, should I? And when I looked at the market, what I found existing in this world was companies that provided a service to nonprofits. And their solution was, we're going to send 8 people to your event with red shirts on, and they're going to use our software to turnkey, white glove your event for you. And that's fine. But
so it's people with paddles, and they scan the paddles.
Well,
or something like that?
it's a staff. They send a staff to do check-in for you and to help all the things happen, right? And my entrepreneur brain kicked in immediately and said, that's not scalable.
No.
And that's very expensive, right? If Sullivan's Island, who's raising 50 to 150, they couldn't afford that, right? If you're not raising 400 grand plus, you can't afford that. And so what I saw immediately was there's this huge hole in this market of events raising 150 and less that have no solutions.
Right.
So immediately I knew we're going to build a product that's self-sign-up, self-managed, do it yourself, and we're going to charge a percentage. So if you raise $1,000, you can afford us, or if you raise $1 million, you can afford us. And so that's how we make money. Is every transaction we make 6%. So if you sell a $100 ticket, we make $6, and it's that simple. And so that made it affordable. It made it a variable cost,
so it's not like this out-of-pocket expense for the.
We only get paid when you raise money,
right?
And so now we're on the same side of the table. Guess what? we want to help you raise more money because then we make more money.
That's a great.
So it really put us on the same team.
Yep, and that's there's a lot of services out there and products out there that you're not on the same tape. You're not in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, and there becomes this contention. Last thing you want is to fight a two-front war.
Yeah.
You want people on your side, and then go at it together with a common goal and a common ambition. So that's awesome. So where are you guys at right now? Like, what's the goal over the next, I don't know, let's call it 24 to 36 months?
Yeah, so, always solving problems, always solving. And, we literally every day, how can we shave 3 more seconds off check-in? And if you do that 100 times, you shave 5 minutes, right? And so that's what we kind of do day to day and are still passionate about. We are, even though I built this to serve these smaller events, and particularly we have this persona, this nice little old lady we call Aunt Janice, and we know if we build software she can use, anyone can use it. So we have a lot of Aunt Janices, and over time of solving her problems, we grew into a very robust enterprise platform. We're now serving probably every nonprofit you've heard of, American Heart, American Cancer, UNICEF, all of them. And so where we want to go now is to get solid relationships with them to say, hey, you found us for a handful of your events. Let us show you what we can do from an enterprise standpoint, and let us do all 300 of your events. So that's a big push for us. We've never really had a sales force because we didn't have anyone to sell to. Can't find Aunt Janice, can't sell to her. Now we have someone to sell to. So growing a sales force is next for us. And then we're just launching products and features. We just super excited. The biggest thing we just launched is kind of a sister company, but it's a feature of Event.Gives. It's called Golf.Gives. And Golf.Gives basically takes everything we've learned from doing events. We know galas raise a lot of money, but people get tired of going to the same gala every year. And we know golf tournaments people love going to, but they don't raise any money, right? And so we formed a partnership with TopGolf and combined the two. So we're basically standing up a silent auction and a live auction inside of a TopGolf venue where we have a TopGolf tournament, and we wrapped peer-to-peer fundraising around it. And so when you register for a player or sponsor a bay, you get your own player page, and you ask your network to pledge a penny per yard that you hit in the tournament. And so we're basically combining both worlds, putting this peer-to-peer around it, and we can now go to our clients and say, hey, without any work, you don't need to find a venue, you don't need to find a caterer, you don't have to plan for 6 months. You pick a date, and we can hand you an extra $100,000 fundraiser this year.
That's cool, man.
And so that's Golf.Gives, and we're running hard on that to just push that into the market.
Dude, it's exciting stuff. Like, I'm getting all amped up listening to you because there's a lot of really good stuff you guys are working, and you're making a big impact too, right? Like
and
you're
it feels
helping.
good when you found that you can also help.
Yeah, like to have a for-profit business that helps nonprofit businesses and gives back and impacts a lot of things that are underfunded or need more money, right? It's a fantastic way. And I think what you're doing is, how do we remove all the thinking from all this, right? From the person who's organizing it, because, dude, I've organized a lot of events. It is a pain in the butt. It's really, really tough to do. There's a lot of outlay of cash. There's a lot of outlay of headache and heartache and chasing people down and all this stuff. It's like, if there's one less thing I have to deal with, and you guys kind of automate it and silver platter hand it up to you, dude, it's amazing.
You nailed it. That's what I say our 2 jobs are. It's to automate your processes as a nonprofit and to lower all the barriers of your attendees to giving. That's our 2 jobs, And we focus, by the way, again, getting on the same side with our clients is, our client isn't our number one focus, their client. So their attendee is what we focus on. If we can give their attendee a phenomenal experience, they look great, they raise more money, and therefore we look great. So that's our focus.
I love it, man. Sam, where can people find you or learn more about Event.Gives?
Super easy, it's in the name. Go to literally Event.Gives and you will find us, all about us. You can reach out to our team at support.event.gives. I didn't get to talk about it much. Our team is phenomenal. They are nothing but fanatics. Everyone in the building is an expert, and that's what we do, is we like to be an expert for you and help you raise more money.
Dude, appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Some really, really cool takeaways from Sam. Hopefully you guys took some notes. I'd love to hear about your favorite takeaways and any questions you have in the comment section below. As always, if you would please like, subscribe to the channel. We're always trying to bring huge value, great content to you, so that way you can start a business, scale your business, and have a future exit for your business. So until next week, we'll see you on the Legacy Podcast.